It's the Security Weekly News, episode 111. Microsoft, Apple Store, PHP, video game cheating, Joe Biden's executive order, Jason Wood, and more. So stick around on the 28th, or this is for the 29th of March.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week. Your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for Security Weekly News. As technology continues to evolve and expand, so have the attackers that put our critical systems in jeopardy. Core Impact from Core Security is a penetration testing tool that safely finds vulnerabilities using the same techniques of adversaries, with certified exploits and wizards that guide you through critical pen tests while maximizing the time of advanced testers by automating their routines. With Core Security, you can safeguard your infrastructure by limiting access, detecting threats, testing for security weaknesses, and efficiently monitoring data. Visit securityweekly.com/core security.
All right, all the news that's fit to print or something. Anyway, all right, what happened this week? Reuters, okay, so this was an interesting story. Reuters reported that President Joe Biden was planning an executive order primarily in response to SolarWinds. So, I don't like executive orders very much because I feel like they circumvent the governmental process. But nevertheless, that's what's going on. Now, this hasn't been released yet, so apparently somebody at Reuters got hold of a draft or something like that. So they went ahead and acted like they released it to them, or maybe they did. I don't know. Anyway, the order has not been finalized at this point, but it allegedly is going to include requirements for federal contractors and agencies. So that means that if you sell stuff to agencies, if you are a federal contractor or you're an agency, you will have to comply with this executive order. So this is going to include multi-factor authentication requirements and data encryption requirements. So that's a big step forward for the federal government, who doesn't really have a lot of that stuff now. It's also, this is my favorite one, it's going to require that software contain a sort of ingredient list that would be a bill of materials that describes all of the different things and components that go into that software. Good luck with that. But theoretically, this would show you that you have SolarWinds embedded in something else that is then used as a component of this radar set. So you would have some idea of the software and all of the different pieces that go into that to try to, of course, avoid things like SolarWinds. It also is a notification requirement, which would include provisions which will require vendors to preserve more digital records and also compel them to cooperate with the FBI and the CISA, as well as breach notifications for customers. So these are just an executive, before everybody panics, it's an executive order that will only impact the government agencies and those people who are selling software to those agencies. So it would go through the government acquisition process. Okay. So anyway, that's what that is supposed to be out next week, but right now that's what they said it has in it. Apex Legends, which is a big video game system, has banned several players from the platform for cheating. Now, I wouldn't normally report stuff like this, but it was pretty interesting to me to read this story. They'd not released the names of the players, but this was like the highest tier of gamers at this, it's called Apex Predator level of this competition type game. And somehow they were using distributed denial of service attacks on an Xbox server in order to knock people out of the game. It didn't really sound like much, but then once I started thinking about it in terms of esports, because to me, I hear video games, I'm thinking, yeah, okay, it's something people do in their spare time. But it's really a huge industry with many, many, many professionals that are making a living playing esports of various types. So essentially what was going on was the equivalent of, say, using steroids, I guess. I mean, maybe it's part of the game, but apparently they didn't think so. So the players had not been named, but they were exposed in a video that was released by the company Respawn, who actually makes the game. And I guess their chief of security or their chief security analyst put the video up on Reddit that was showing what was going on. And the top-ranking players would get knocked offline during the game, and then they were able to get back in. but by then they'd been stomped by these other players, and I guess that's how they figured out who the people were, by looking at who was always there. I mean, I guess this is a pretty serious thing going on with esports, and we're probably going to have to see more security along those lines. So I would guess that security in these things is a pretty high priority. I do remember back in probably the late 90s, I got kicked off of an online game because they claimed I was cheating somehow. I was, but there was no way they could prove it, because all of the activity was taking place on my local machine, because for some reason they never thought that somebody might actually like sniff the traffic that was coming out of their game and modify it en route to their server. And all the packets were in the clear, and it was pretty easy to see. So a lot of games went through this kind of like cycle, that caused problems for them, and then they had to up their security. I mean, if you didn't know that hacking used to be simple, it was, because hacking is one of the few things today that you go, these kids today have it rough. Usually it's like, these kids today, yeah, but when I was a kid, we had all the packets in the clear, anonymous FTP, world writable directories, everything, and nobody knew what any of that stuff meant. So it was a lot easier back then. The PHP project announced on Sunday that their main get.php.net server had been compromised, and 2 malicious commits were uploaded. One of those was a backdoor Trojan that was pushed in. None of this was pushed into production, according to PHP, but this is another example of an attempted supply chain attack. PHP said they didn't know how it happened, but that they were now moving to abandon the internal infrastructure that they had been using and push all their commits to GitHub directly. Targeting online repositories is certainly nothing new, and we're continually going to see these attempts to push this type of stuff up, especially after SolarWinds made it a thing. I mean, it was a thing before, but SolarWinds made it a high-profile thing. So, and as our coding base has grown more, porous, maybe, NPM, Ruby gems, and other open platforms have all been under attack in similar manners of late. So maybe President Biden's software ingredients list isn't such a bad idea at this point. Now, I don't know how that gets updated and how you keep up with all of it, but hey, it's an executive order. Make it so. If you're up for bug bounties, Microsoft has been upping the offers for bugs found in Teams. Teams, which will be eventually be the replacement for Skype. I think they have an end date for Skype now. And Teams is offering up to $30,000 for some bugs that you might find. The focus of those high-paying ones is on user data exposure. The program at Microsoft is called Apps Bounty Program, and the payouts range from $6,000 to a top end of $30,000. So if you're interested in bug hunting, now's your chance. Microsoft has released, or maybe re-released, the Win 10 cumulative update that is hopefully going to fix all the issues that came out of the latest update. If you didn't know, that recent update had been causing a lot of problems. They withdrew it, or they suspended it, or something like that last week. And now they have released a new cumulative update that ends in 8.4.2. I'm not reading that whole number. And it is for the latest Windows 10 version. So that's the 20H version of Windows 10. So if you haven't already pushed out the latest Windows 10 updates due to problems that were being experienced, maybe this one will help. I pushed those updates onto my machines, and so far they have been operating better. The update does contain a bunch of security fixes as well. The article I put on there, it does have all the list of everything and anything that you might need. I couldn't resist this next This story was just so funny. I was laughing while I was reading this story. So there's a ransomware called Ziggy, which I honestly didn't know much about. But Ziggy Ransomware had recently announced that they were ceasing operations. So I guess in the modern age, ransomware is more like a startup company or something now. So you hear about this this new restaurant opened, and then you hear them suddenly ceasing operations. I didn't know if that meant they didn't get enough ransomwares or what. But their operations had suddenly shut down in February, and the administrator, which is the only way they've ever referred to this person in the article, the administrator announced that the operators were sad, and they were going to publish all of their decryption keys, which they did. They actually put out an SQL database of all their decryption keys, and all that happened on 7th of February. Okay, so it was like, all right, well, that's lovely. They also then published a tool to assist in the decryption process. And again, I was like, who would download something from a ransomware company? I mean, I would, if the ransomware company contacted me and says, I know we ransomwared you, but we feel bad and we're sad. So you know what? We're going to give you the key. Here's a tool so that you can fix it. And then, of course, it would be ransomware, right? It would just be even nastier. Yeah, it wasn't, though. Apparently, the tool was legit. Well, on the 19th of March, the administrator again announced that Ziggy would also be planning to return all of the money that had been paid and said that victims should email Ziggy Ransomware at secmail.pro and they would return the Bitcoin that you had paid in ransom. And I'm like, oh my! So wait, is this it's another scam? But it's not. So Bleeping Computer apparently talked to this person, and the person said they lived in a third world country and they had to sell their home to pay back the ransom. Yeah, so I got ransomware. They offered to return my money if I email them, and I can download the keys, and all I got to do, and they'll just transfer the Bitcoin back into the original wallet, and then it's, well, I guess, it sounds completely illegitimate, but apparently it is legitimate. I mean, it just sounds like a scam to me all the way down the line, but Bleeping Computer seemed to be validating it. So at the end of it, it sounded to me like maybe somebody got caught, and suddenly the local militia shows up with a bunch of I don't know, tires filled with gasoline or something, and says, here's your choices. You shouldn't have ransomwared the dictator's son. That was bad. So maybe they're trying to avoid jail or something horrible. Anyway, Apple says the App Store is very safe and heavily scrutinized. But according to this story, a fake app that looks like a Trezor, I can't say it. I just can't break it. It's Trezor. I'm sure you're supposed to say treasure, but it's Trezor. I guess, I don't know. Anyway, Trezor is a hardware device that stores Bitcoin. So it's something you buy, you plug it in, and it puts your Bitcoin wallet on the hardware device, and you can store things in it. The app that was downloaded by this person in the article, basically he said it looked legit, it had the logo, it had everything, and it was in the Apple Store, so he trusted it. So he downloaded it and installed it. But guess what? It was fake. And it basically allowed them to drain the 17.1 Bitcoins out of his Trezor device. And of course, good luck getting those back. Apple gets a nice fee for sales through their App Store, and they maintain that it is the safest App Store in the world. But the Coalition for App Fairness, which is not the App Fairness Coalition, lousy splitters, and yes, that was a Monty Python reference, said that Apple's security standards are inconsistently applied and only enforced when it will directly benefit Apple. Anyway, be careful with your Bitcoin wallets, because pretty much like your old-fashioned analog wallet, if you hand it to a guy named Chet in an alley behind the Port Authority, you probably aren't getting it back. Well, when we return, the amazing Jason Wood will be back from his wherever he was. Stick around.
We're proud to announce CISO Stories, a new podcast series in partnership with Cybersecurity Collaborative and Cyber Reason. CISO Stories features the candid perspectives and experiences of frontline senior security executives and dives deep into timely security topics. CISO Stories is hosted by Todd Fitzgerald, VP of Cybersecurity Strategy at Cybersecurity Collaborative, and Sam Curry, Chief Product and Security Officer at Cyber Reason. Listen weekly as they speak with extraordinary CISOs by visiting securityweekly.com/CSP.
Well, straight back from appearing as a guest host on Candy or Not Candy, which, if you don't know that, you probably know that, it's Jason Wood. Hi, Jason.
Hey, Doug. Good to be back with you again. It's always fun to wait and see what it is you're coming up with this week.
Well, Candy or Not Candy is a thing.
I guess so.
Oh, you don't know? If you don't know what it is, it's like it's this weird Japanese game show where they make candy that looks like other stuff. So like you make like a keyboard or a phone out of like cake and candy and stuff, but they also make it out of really gross stuff. And then the contestants have to eat the whatever they give them. So they'll give them like a phone that's made out of candy, but it's actually made out of like worms or something. And it's a Japanese game show.
Got it. All right. Yeah. Suddenly this makes a little bit more sense to me. Yeah, I didn't know what it was. I was like, oh, that's on my
I
list
didn't
of
know
things
if
to
you
look
know
up
what it was. but
carefully and
we
not
try.
on the work computer. So, hey, everybody. Good to be back with you. I know this may be hard to believe, but apparently folks conducting ransomware won't always be able to get you your data back. Shocking, I know. Today, the Portswigger blog, run by the same folks at Bring Us Burp Suite, published a post titled Ransomware. Nearly 1/5 of victims who pay off extortionists fail to get their data back. Probably not the biggest surprise to anybody who's been around security for a while. But since I spend a lot of my work week looking at intrusions that frequently have to do with ransomware, I was kind of curious about anything around this topic. Just the whole criminal ecosystem behind this is interesting to me and how it works. But what I thought was interesting about this post was that they're actually putting together some numbers to quantify what's going on when people pay out the ransom, or actually when they don't pay out the ransom as well. Kaspersky actually conducted this survey, and Portswigger's just reporting on it. And it focuses on victims who are located in the UK. Now, keep in mind, this is a survey. People are responding to this. They have whatever their reasons for wanting to respond to this. So that may skew the results. People, their experiences that they have may make them more or less likely to go ahead and give some information here. Regardless, the end of this is a lot of folks aren't getting their data back, whether they pay out or not. They said basically in this survey that 46 of the people who experienced a ransomware outbreak decided to go out and pay the ransom. Of that 46, 11% of them who paid the ransom weren't actually able to decrypt their data. The survey goes on to say that, kind of mash the two together, those who pay and those who don't pay. 18% of the victims were able to get all of their data back. So if you get hit with ransomware, basically what I see here is you're going to lose data. A small number of people are able to deal with that. So this is, kind of a testament to our backups and recovery processes, which, not surprisingly, probably a lot of folks need some help. But yeah, some of the people here, they skipped out on paying it, and obviously they were able to recover their data. Other folks did pay the ransom and were able to get their data back, but others weren't. So they said, was it 55% of the victims of the attack said they lost some of their data, about 55% of the time. 35% of that, or of that total number, they said they lost a ton of data. And as a total of the entire number of victims, 13% said they lost nearly everything. So those are some numbers here to look at, as far as impact to these operations. What I thought was interesting here is, obviously, you pay out to get your data back and you still can't. Why is this occurring? A couple of ideas come to mind. Some of these operators, they probably just don't care, so they take the money and run and don't bother with providing legitimate keys. Others may just be due to the nature of ransomware as an operations. Somebody comes in, they get vouched for in some way, they get access to this tool set, and they go out and they start doing ransomware attacks, but they don't really know what they're doing, and they're kind of screwing up, and so they're not tracking keys maybe well, and so they're not able to deliver it back to the victim very very accurately. So that's a possibility as well. That's just kind of an opinion. I don't really have any data to back that up, but I think when you look at it, these types of groups, it's going to be an IT operation essentially, and IT operations, you always have some segment of those that have trouble. I think we've all worked with somebody who consistently struggles to get through their day. On the flip side of this, though, of course, it could be that the victims are struggling to just use the tools to recover the data at all. They've got limited IT resources and on their staff, and they don't know what they're doing, and they're not able to figure out how to make it work. I've seen enough trouble lately with people just trying to get on Zoom, so why would that surprise me? A number of these attacks, if you look at the organizations that are getting hit, a lot of the ransomware campaigns are taking advantage of just really common easy to avoid mistakes. Things like putting SMB and RDP out on the internet, and they don't have password lockouts set up, and the bad guys brute force away. They put a weak password on it, and lo and behold, they get in. They lock up the data there on that system. They see if they can spread laterally to other hosts, lock up data on file shares or other systems that they can log into. And then they just, rinse and repeat on this. This is not incredibly elite at hacking or attacking anybody. It's just easy mode. You pull down a password dump, let fly at it, and see what you get. And it worked well enough, obviously, that these folks were able to make money. The Kaspersky did make a comment that paying out, one of the problems with ransomware operations is the more we pay out, yes, you may get your data back, maybe you won't, but we're just encouraging those who are conducting these ops to keep it up. I mean, to be honest with you, the problem that we're running into is where a lot of this is occurring. We're getting simple mistakes being made. It doesn't, nothing like RDP should be hanging out on the internet without any kind of protection. If you got to do RDP sitting on the internet, at least apply multi-factor authentication. But VPN requiring multi-factor authentication is a much better way to start out. You've always got these types of operations out here that they're going to be running these types of attacks, and if we were able to put just some basic defenses in place, we would start to prevent a lot of these successful attacks. And these bottom feeder ransomware operators would start to maybe refund all their money because they're not very good at it. I don't know. But I think it's a problem area for us that we're constantly dealing with. I think it's interesting to see the numbers behind this. If you're looking at what the impacts of ransomware are and thinking about, hey, what would happen if we got hit? This gives you maybe some guidance as far as some statistics you could cite as you're talking to management to maybe get you some backing for that multi-factor authentication system, or to improve your backup and recovery processes, things like that. So go ahead and take a look at that if you're interested. I think it's shockingly, like I said, if you pay the ransom, you still may be screwed. So. Well, welcome to playing with criminals.
Exactly, you're playing with criminals. WannaCry had a help desk. So you could actually contact them and go like, oh, I don't know how to use Bitcoin, and they had all these how-tos, and a person would answer the phone, and it wasn't even, we called it once. It wasn't even like like United Airlines or something where it's just like, we care so much about you, we're going to let you listen to this music over and over and over again, and we couldn't even afford more than 10 bars. Da 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 da. I've said on all of us have said in a lot of airports listening to that music before.
3 bars. That was last week for me.
Yeah, exactly. Loads of fun. But yeah, ransomware, make sure you have out-of-band backups too. That's the other thing I always try to tell people, is that you have a set of backups that nothing can get to, and they're not like 7 years old, so you really need that.
That idea of getting it off the network and out of the building still applies.
Yeah, and out of the building is important, because if the building burns down or something, that's really bad. So there are ways to do that, but you have to make sure it's not permanently connected, or that a lot of ransomware will jump right over that bridge. So if you have a file share or something like that, it'll just jump right on there and you're toast. So think about that. And I know not everybody has the resources, but you better find some, or you're going to get ransomware, because there's lots of ransomware people out. Thanks, Jason. Finally, U.S. Strategic Command had a bizarre tweet that said, well, I can't pronounce it because it's just a bunch of random gibberish. But if you don't know, U.S. Strategic Command is the organization that basically manages the end of the world. I mean, the United States has enough weapons all by themselves stockpiled to take on like the Klingon Empire or something. And they're all controlled by Strategic Command. So as you might guess, this is a little bit of a twitchy group with everybody. So, when they tweet gibberish, people tend to start running around flapping their arms and screaming and, scrambling the birds and all that Dr. Strangelove kind of stuff. I mean, are they hacked? Is this the secret Armageddon code that means Trump has the football call and he's mad, run for the shelters, or some secret code that the Billionaires Club is meeting on Esteban's private island in 3 hours, bring champagne. I mean, I don't know. But anyway, they shortly followed this mysterious tweet with another tweet, always a great source of information, that said, apologies for any confusion. Please disregard this post. Which I was like, does that mean the missiles are in the air? Hallelujah. It's just another secret code. Should I head to the bomb shelter, call Larry because, I know I'm going to need the zombie survival wagon to come pick me up? Sure, nothing to see here. Move along. The missiles didn't fire. That smoke is not real. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Well, anyway, Daily Dot filed a Freedom of Information Act on them to try to find out what this was. And apparently, even though they failed to respond to the Freedom of Information Act, the Freedom of Information Act officer, I didn't even know there was such a thing, said that one of them, the Twitter manager of this account, had a young child who was playing with the keys and sent a tweet. That did not make me feel any better. So a long time ago, my cat got on my laptop, and I guess it was twitching its paws in some mysterious way, and it actually sent an email to my boss, who thought it was some kind of crypto that I had sent him. And when I got up the next day, I had all these emails from him saying, I'm not making any progress here. Can you give me a clue? Blah. And I was like, oh, geez, what is this? Anyway, yeah, so that was old Mr. Cat. So now you kids, stay away from Dad's big red button that says world equals end on it, okay? So, no pressing. And Kitty, don't get up there. Anyway, I was not reassured by this whole story. Glad to see Jace is back. I'm Doug White, and I want my vaccine, and I want it now. Damn it, Jim, I'm a celebrity. See you Friday.